Okay. 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 Yeah, that's fine. So just some updates to her medicine, right? This was just updates to her medication? Okay, yeah, that's perfect. If this is what she needs and y'all say she needs it, it's great. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Let's go into studio mode. What did they say before I get started? Oh, cool. So no idea. They're gonna make our appointments this Sunday, but they always because the nurse has to go back and like screen. I don't understand what's being changed, but I just say, "This is what the doctor's saying." Okay. This time. No. This is what we're doing now. No. Okay. I know, but still checking in and stuff and yeah. Well, that's good. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. All right. Here's what you're doing this thing. Keep done it, and I'll be out here, and I will be yours until what? Until I have something else. Yep. All right. I love you. Bye. My door's cracked if the animals want to come. Okay, here we go. Here we go. One more time. Hey guys, welcome to my stream today. I just really wanted to do a quick recap over WWDC. So WWDC is Apple's
worldwide developer conference, I thought instead of doing my normal Swift UI app development stuff, I would go over like what happened inside the keynote. Cool. So like right off the back, something that was, so I'm just going to jump right into this. Right off the back, what Tim Cook, or Tim Apple, according to some people on Twitter, what Tim Cook decided to do was actually in their intro, completely address racism and equality. It's something that I wasn't expecting actually Apple to even address during this time, but I was super proud and super happy that they did. Then they jumped, so after that, so before even the intro though, it was kind of cool, like if you got on the app or you tuned into the live stream, it was literally like camera panning around globe, and the globe, instead of having lights on, which you could kind of see at some point, there would be lights that, like if you had, like the maps, and you can see all the lights where like electricity is on and that kind of thing. Instead of lights, they had memojis on there. So it was kind of cool, and that's what populated the earth. And that's what the like waiting screen was for like the 15 minutes to WWDC. Then, like I said, the intro, after they got in, they did this really cool panoramic drone shot of Apple Park, went in, focused on Tim Cook, who just sat on the stage in the Steve Jobs Theater, and then he addressed racism and equality with a very nice, very well put together video shot of people of color demanding equality, demanding racial justice, and then also, of course, them using Apple devices and stuff like that. And then after that, we jumped into iOS 14. We did an intro, iOS, iPadOS, watchOS, HomeKit, Apple TV, and then also with finally ending with macOS. So we then jump into iOS 14 being the next thing. Sorry, this is like my first time doing a WWDC recap, so this is always fun. iOS 14 doing the next thing we're going to talk about, a whole new experience, as was said on stage, or on the video, I guess now, since there wasn't really a true stage. It was cool, like the transition from Steve Jobs Theater to where Phil Schiller was to give the talk was super cool, or to give most of the presentation. They just did a transition into one of the rooms, I'm guessing in Steve Jobs Theater, and it was a big white room, probably an LED wall, unless that was like just put in on green screen. But that's where they did most of the big announcements, unless they wanted to go to something on site, like with the watchOS stuff. But then in iOS 14, they have a whole new experience where basically it's a whole new home screen layout. You get an app library, which was going to auto-categorize some apps for you. So you can have like squares of like your social apps and your health apps and your other type of apps. Like they just go into different squares automatically with on-device learning. Oh, thanks for the follow, Hayden Rue 2022. Really appreciate it there. So they go into those app layouts, into that, and then so that's really cool to start thinking about how you don't actually have to have all your apps on the home screen anymore. They actually live in that app library. Then you can also go and make custom app home screen layouts, basically. I forgot exactly what they were called. So you could have preset home screen looks, and then whatever's not on that home screen look is going to go into that, into that app library. So if like Facebook wasn't on one of those home screen looks, then it gets tossed into the app library. So if you ever want to get it from there, you can. And then another thing that really comes into play is the app widget, you can now put widgets on the home screen. So you could have big bars of widgets, so just like if you were on, like you're on the widget home screen where you can have like the weather app just be super small like that. You could do that direct on the home screen and have apps above it, widgets, apps below it. Widgets can be in different sizes also. So in like a 2x2 app size square if you wanted to, so that they can just be customized on those home screen layouts. So that was really cool. They took a lot of widget inspiration from the different watch faces in watchOS. So they figured out how to customize that and all that good stuff. And then you can have also what's called Smart Stat, kind of like this, what I was taking from the Siri watch face on iOS, where you can actually go through and start, so at different times of the day, you get different information. So like if you have a meeting coming up, you can start to get that meeting information, like that calendar invite, or you could go back to the weather if you check the weather during that time. So it's just kind of cool to be seeing some of those come back to life a bit more. Let's see, what else was there in iOS 14? Siri, instead of taking up the full screen now, is going to be it's going to only take up like a small portion of like where the dock is, in the middle of like where the dock is on an iPhone, which is really cool. They didn't talk about how far back iOS 14 will support, but we'll see how that goes as time goes on, of course, with that. Hopefully, rumors are that it's going to stay about the same as iOS 13. I'm hoping we hear a little bit more of that as time goes on this week. I'm sure we will. I was actually really surprised they didn't mention how far back iOS 14 will go. And then with Siri, they're actually going to do dictation on device instead of having it to send it to a server and then back if needed, which is pretty nifty. Messages got a whole new upgrade as well. So with conversations, which is really nice, you can pin to the top. So in your messages window, you could just pin your person pin your conversation to the top. That way you never have to completely scroll. I know this is going to be really useful. So like I can pin like my wife and I chat up at the top so that we can, so I don't have to keep scrolling, because there'll be days where we are home like we are now with all this COVID stuff. So we don't really text back and forth. But sometimes I want to go back into the messages. So instead of having to scroll through 8,000 messages to get to that, it's just right there at the top. And then there's going to be little notifications with those pins as well, which is cool. Emojis are getting more updates. And then there's also a big push into group messaging as well. So if you're familiar with Slack, a lot of those features are coming to messages. So you have inline replies, which you can view as threads. So like if you and your friends are talking about getting dinner, then you can just make that an inline reply at that point and just see and focus on that one inline reply without messing up the entire, without dealing with the entire rest of the message. And then there's also going to be mentions. So you can highlight or notify specifically one person when you want to talk to them. It's great. It's finally getting on par with a bunch of other what I'm going to call business type apps, or even like Discord, where you can just say what user you want to notify, and it automatically notifies that person. Something at this point that I noticed is during the keynote is that there was a lot more diversity on stage, which was kind of cool to see. A lot more people, more representation of different people on stage, which was nifty. In iOS 14, there's also going to be, they talked about this in Siri, and my notes got a little squirrely here. There's also going to be a translate app for conversations, and that's all going to be translated offline. There's a list of languages that are supported. I know Spanish is one of them, and I believe French and a couple others are more. And what this is going to allow you to do is actually just say exactly what you want in whatever language that's one of those supported ones. And then you can and then it's going to translate it into the language that you want it to be. I thought this was really nifty, especially for people who work in an international type market, because you're able to just talk and then it gets automatically translated into that language, and then the phone or iPad, I'm guessing, will also be taken into consideration. Will be able to say that translation in the proper language that you wanted. Yeah, I was really excited to hear about that translation app. It's going to help, like, especially in my line of work where I am a product support specialist. It'll help me help with those international calls a little bit easier, or even not even calls, like messages and emails will just be a tad bit easier in that respect. Maps got a couple new features. So there's guides, which are going to give a little bit more in-depth analysis over specific locations. There's new ways to get to places. So there's new traveling directions. I forgot transportation directions. There we go. So they're trying to get to focus on different ways of transporting you from place to place, meaning like cycling. So there's a big improvement on cycling things. So cycling routes, stuff like that. Or even if you have like an electric vehicle, a better focus on routing for electric vehicles, like charging stations, all that good stuff along your route to make sure that you hopefully don't run out of juice. Again, this is just a quick outline, quick thoughts and things about the app. About the WWDC 2020 keynote. So far, the most thing I've been excited for is that Translate app and then the improvements to messages. Going back a little bit more to the widgets home screen, I got super excited when I heard that also, to start incorporating to start looking into my coffee companion app. I know I started building that with iOS 13 in mind, but if the same phones are supported, then it'll become an iOS 14 app and to hopefully take advantage of that widget feature. That way you don't have to actually go inside the app itself. You can just see it right there on the home screen. Now let's jump into Carplay a little bit. This was also something I got super excited about. I love Carplay in my car. It has a really high percentage of availability in the US. It has 97%. I was really shocked by that number for some reason. But then there were new app categories, including like ordering food to go. And then virtual car keys was also a neat idea, where your virtual car key lives inside your phone. So you tap your phone to your car and it's going to be able to unlock and run your car just like those key fobs do with the proximity sensor. And that all uses the U1 chip. So as long as you have an iPhone 11 series and above, you should be able to use this. Of course, the car then has to support it. Apple said that there was some BMW car that's going to support it right off the back. So that's just something a little bit to look forward to, I guess, as new cars come out, to see how that partnership is going to go. It's also kind of it'll be interesting to see if any manufacturer backdates it also to work with other cars. Or if it's just reliant on like a CarPlay head unit. I'm guessing it's going to require specific cars, but we'll have to wait and see how car manufacturers work. The last thing that got me super excited when specifically talking about the iOS section was the Appstore Clips function, where like they showed what'd they show? They showed a parking sign, put your phone up to it, and it decided that, and then it brought up like a little part at the bottom of the phone that said, hey, here's the part of the app you need. And then you could just go and launch that single part of the app. And then it would, you could pay for parking. You could, get on that scooter. That's a thing now. All that good stuff. Or if you're at like a coffee shop, you could open the coffee shop app, which is kind of nifty. I had the idea that would be really cool because they said you could also put it on websites and stuff like that. So you can immediately open the apps that you're interested in. So at some point, all my apps will have those app clips sections because you can also have like quick download links in there and stuff like that. So like iHog, and once you're already on the App Store, instead of just having a link to jump you to the App Store, you just click on that link. Pops up at the bottom just like if you were downloading like the app from the App Store, and then you're good to go, and you just hit that button and it gets downloaded on your phone. It just makes it really quick. You don't have to jump from Safari to the App Store. It can just open up a little window at the bottom, and that would allow you to download from there. Something else in iOS 14 that's coming is picture-in-picture. So you can actually, like if you're watching a movie on your phone, you go into a different part of the phone, then picture-in-picture comes into play so your movie can start. They also talked about FaceTime working with that, which is exciting because every time you exit FaceTime, the person you're FaceTiming with just sees a blurred out version of the last window. So that's not very fun. So hopefully that will allow for FaceTime calls to be a little bit more versatile. Jumping into, if you have any questions or want to comment on anything I'm saying, feel free, drop it in the chat. I'm more than happy to discuss, but I'm just going to keep going. Unless I see some questions there. I'm trying not to make this as nearly as long as the keynote was, because that was a solid 2 hours of information. I think I'm already going a little bit faster now. iPad OS. So transitioning from iOS to iPad OS. There's ARKit improvements as always. I really wish I was a lot better with graphics so that I could do more ARKit stuff. I think it'd be really nifty to do an ARKit like stage and stuff like that. Almost 2000 said, I thought I had a good invention where it was a breath test before you could drive your car. Yeah, I mean, that's already a thing for people who have DUIs or DWIs, so that you don't like start the car without the breath test. It is a good idea, and I bet it does save some lives as long as you're able to keep it as the person that is blowing into the breathalyzer. But I bet there's probably going to be a way to tie that they could tie that in to be a smart type breathalyzer that makes it a little bit easier, especially with those virtual key things coming out in iOS 14. But that would be a nifty idea as well. Yeah. It'll be an interesting time to see if people can interact that way with the so what'll be interesting at the end of this week is figuring out how much developers can actually dive into some of these APIs and features that are coming into iOS 14, because having something like that would be really useful. I know that they had already talked about limitations, like if you were trying to share a key with like a teenager. So it would be kind of nifty to see what other kind of limitations you can put on the app and on like virtual keys as well. I do make apps. Actually, I make apps on live stream, both on Twitch and Mixer. I usually go to both of them at the same time. So usually every Monday and Friday, I'm working on some kind of app on Swift UI. Right now, it's been like a coffee companion app that I was kind of mentioning about doing with the widgets at the home screen. They're both for fun. all the apps I make are all for fun. They're all mine. Nothing really to hide about them. So, thanks for the follow. I really appreciate it. Wow. Hold on. I am in all kinds of weird things on the chat. Thanks for the lurk, Kill Switcher. I really appreciate it. We're just gonna keep no problem about you not being able to chat a little bit. I'm just doing a run through of the apps exactly. But yeah, thanks for the follow. Yes, I make apps. So this WWDC is like really and truly my first WWDC that I've wanted to hit with. Thanks for the follow, Fishman JW. I also appreciate it. It's one of the first WWDCs I've actually taken from a full-blown app dev instead of just being like an Apple enthusiast as I am. So this has been a fun one to actually figure out what I want to use inside apps as well. Like I was saying, that app clip things. Cool. I'm going to keep going to iPad OS because there's some nifty things with iPad OS and that gets added to iOS as well. Sidebar. So you get the widgets from iOS 14. I'm hoping they didn't really show this in the keynote very much, but I'm going to get the developer. I already decided like all the developer betas are going on all of my devices, including my MacBook. So we'll see how it works. But there's going to be redesigned widgets on the home screen for iPad OS. I'm hoping they don't just stay in that like column that they're in right now. That we can actually pull them in and take advantage of that whole home screen if we wanted to. Do I make monies from app development? Occasionally I do make money. I do have one paid app on the store, so that's like it's like $1.99. It's very unique to the lighting industry. So occasionally someone does buy it. I get maybe 2 or 3. I get 3 to 5 purchases or downloads a month on that one. And $1.99, so that's about $2. So I can make anywhere from like $6 to $10, and then you subtract the App Store cut. So here and there, it's enough to cover the Apple development fee, to be honest. Yeah, it's definitely it's enough to keep my hobby going. And then in all the app, and then in the other app that's free to download, I have like a tip jar in there. But if I'm making any money from app development, it's really from blog posts, and people have been really nice with blog posts and have just clicked on the link at the bottom and bought me a coffee or two. So I'm going to do a shameless plug real quick. There is a donate caffeine button. If you hit that button, you can go and buy me a coffee or two. Just really shameless plug there. If you like what I'm talking about or want to see more stuff happen. So that's really where most of the money has come from. Or I also post on Medium, and I put those behind the Medium paywall, and they also help me, and they also get me some money here and there. So it's been again, it's not like I'm making my living off of app development. I'm definitely not making my living off of app development, but it's definitely been able to keep funding more app development, I should say. Sidebars are coming to iPadOS, so you can get a little bit better browsing experience and stuff like that, which is nifty. All in Notes, Files, and Photos were the 3 apps that they highlighted, so quick and easy adjustments there. Music gets some full screen layouts. We're adding in drop-down menus into iPadOS and toolbar menus. We're slowly bridging that gap from iPadOS to macOS, and there's a reason for that, which we'll get to at the end. I'm just running through like the way the keynote was presented. Siri now has floating windows for results so like if you wanted to open reminders, it can open reminders in a small pop-up window rather than taking up the full screen. Finally, calls won't take up the full window, the full screen on iPadOS or iOS. So we can just have calls be a nice little notification that rolls up at the top, and you decide what you want to do with calls. It is so, like, that part alone was worth, like, watching the whole keynote if you wanted to. Then we have, what else do we have coming up? That was, like, super happy. iPadOS also gets Spotlight now, so you can, so pretty much Spotlight. I mean, it's its own search again, just like Spotlight so like Spotlight on Mac, it comes to iPadOS. It even has the nice floating pop. So what I really noticed is that there's a lot more floating windows coming into iPadOS 14, which is nifty. So search comes up in a floating window. It doesn't take up the entire screen. You get access to whatever was there before, so you don't lose context of what you were working on beforehand. I know I use it a lot in macOS where you command space. You can type in what you want. I'm assuming it's going to be about the same. It's going to work with the same shortcut that it always has, both in iPadOS to access the search and macOS. Hopefully, they open some of that search engine API up, because hopefully they open some of that search API up to have a Alfred type experience. That's a third-party Spotlight replacement app on Mac. That would be really cool to see come to iPadOS now that those gaps are being bridged a little bit more. Oh, no problem for interrupting. I'm just gonna try not to lose too much thought, but I will also respond. So it takes one really big popular app to hit it big, and then you become kind of known in the App Store or the app dev community. So I'm really just trying. Some people will focus on one app and making that the best app. Not saying that my apps aren't good. I like a variety though, where like I have 2 that are very specific to the lighting that are out and about right now. And then I'm making like a coffee timer type app that can go to more but be applied to a wider audience. So I'm kind of instead of like focusing on one app and all my endeavors going into one app, I'm kind of like doing let's make as many apps for ideas that I have. I might as well use this like app dev program to make as many apps as I can, and we'll see what sticks and what's being used. And if it's not being used, then I don't have to completely continue to support it if I don't want to. So it's just people have different methodologies for how they develop apps. I like to do I'm going to cast my net as wide as possible, and do whatever interests me, to be honest. Since I'm not doing it as a job, all of this is like out on as a side project, basically. So if I'm interested in it, then I get to actually work on it, and it's nice. Another thing that was added in iPadOS, which got a little bit excited for me, is the pencil improvements. So like, You might know on watchOS you have the scribble function where you can just where you can write the letter, like you draw out the letter. That's going to come to iPadOS with the pencil. Shape recognition and notes. So like if you draw a star, it'll change it to an actual star shape. Word and letter recognition for handwritten notes as well. And then also multi-language support in Scribble. So you can mix and match languages in Scribble, which is really nifty. Scribble would be like in some kind of text input field. You would be able to write out exactly what you're trying to, instead of typing. So that could also be a little bit quicker if you already have the pencil, but you need to type. You could just write it out with the pencil and call it done. I know I've done that a couple times for inside messaging, because on iPad, if you landscape it, you can have that part where you're supposed to write with the hand or the pencil and it gives the handwritten note. Well, and that's how I was responding to some messages, is through the handwritten note. It'd be really nifty if it just kept it as pure text instead of the handwriting part. AirPods is supposed to actually support auto switch now based on which device you're using, which is really nifty. So I thought this was originally announced with whenever AirPods were released, like where I was listening to music on the iPhone, I stopped it. I then went to my iPad to pick up a podcast, like it would automatically switch for me. I guess that wasn't the case because it was now announced in iOS as part of 14. And then they're also going to do spatial audio to the iPad Pros. So like as you, if you're watching a movie, like in a movie theater where you can hear where all the sound is coming from around you, that's what's going to happen with the AirPods. And then they're also going to do some kind of head tracking with, apparently there's an accelerometer and a gyroscope inside the AirPod Pros. So when you like turn your head, like if you're on a plane or something like that, the noise is going to follow your head. So it'll always come from your left. Even if you like turn this way, well, the left would now be in front of you. But the left, because it's going to do head tracking, the left is going to come from your left. It's just going to follow like my hand is right now. So that was pretty nifty to hear about. That was coming through. I don't do much I don't have anything in watchOS development right now. It's going to be cool. It's going to be nifty. More rich complications. Complications can also be built with SwiftUI, which is great. Like last year they introduced SwiftUI for watchOS, but the complications couldn't come into watchOS. So that was a little bit of a letdown there. Just because you couldn't get those two merged together. There's a new workout being added for dance. So like if you're part of a dance team, you can actually run a workout when you're dancing now and don't have to categorize it as other. watchOS face sharing is coming. So you can actually, if you make a really cool watch face, you can share it from between people, or app developers can actually put that inside their app for you to share whatever watch face you want with whoever you want, which is kind of nifty. Or you could load a specific watchOS watch face if you wanted to from an app. I know Carrot kind of supports a little bit of this where you can customize the complications inside the app. But this would allow you to build your own like weather watch face and share that to your watch already. And then share it to your friends if you wanted to. Just like iOS, Maps also gets improvements for cycling on your watch. And also guidance gets a little bit easier on your watch as well. Sleep tracking is finally built in to watchOS to help you build a routine, and you get a new wind down screen on the iPhone, which gets you access to some shortcuts. So if you actually have a routine for sleeping, like you meditate or whatever you do before bed, you can trigger a shortcut to start those apps. With that comes a whole new sleep view inside Health app. They redo it, or they're going to redo it. And then there is also a new feature for hand washing. So no more singing happy birthday 2 times. The watch is going to pick up your hand washing motion, or whatever motion they think is hand washing, and then start a timer. And then once the timer is done, it'll do a neat little animation on the screen, and you'll get some haptic feedback so that you can stop hand washing. And that was really it for watchOS. There's probably some stuff that I'm missing in watchOS, but I'm not really that much of a watchOS developer right now. So I kind of let that be. Those were just the main features that I was kind of looking forward to. Privacy, always important in Apple. Apps must now ask about what they track from you. So if you have if they're tracking if they're doing tracking between apps and stuff like that, then they must ask for your permission. So we'll see how that gets implemented and when apps have to start doing that. Privacy policy will also, as usual, privacy policy is required. But what's also cool is on the App Store screen, it's going to lay out what type of data is actually asked from the app. Then we get into HomeKit. They've done a lot of stuff to open source HomeKit and all this kind of jazz, which is nifty. Also working with Google and Amazon, so some of the big players, to make sure HomeKit is accessible to all of the devices that's needed. What's going to come into play though in iOS, in the next version, is there's going to be adaptive lighting. So as your time changes throughout the day, the lights can either get warmer or cooler as needed, which is pretty nifty. I'm really curious how that works with different brands of light bulbs. I'm hoping that they're kind of smart enough to talk to each other and say, hey, I have this color temperature and this color temperature, and they can figure out how to make the color right. I know that's always an issue. Maybe that's just an issue with like stage lighting, but like you could have two different, going to stage lighting a little bit, which is where my background is really. I could have two 575 watt lamps inside a light, but because this one has 500 hours on it, it might be a little bit warmer, so it's really hard to get the color match. So I'm really curious how this adaptive lighting can take that into effect there. HomeKit supported cameras. You can have activity zones, face recognition, and then Siri can also open the camera view or like whatever live view that camera is looking at right now if you wanted to. Apple TV, picture-in-picture in Apple TV is coming, and also with AirPlay as well, system-wide support for picture-in-picture. So maybe you're watching a show on Netflix, you AirPlay something to the TV, then that could go into the picture-in-picture window, so you could still have Netflix going, for example, and you don't have to completely exit Netflix, or Netflix doesn't get completely exited to support picture-in-picture, which is kind of nifty. There's a new Apple TV show coming. It's going to be called Foundation. It's a new sci-fi show. I forgot the name. It looks nifty. It looks cool. So I would definitely suggest checking it out again. And then finally, we get into macOS. And macOS is going to be a brand new design. It definitely looks more like iOS than previous versions of macOS. It's still Mac-like though, so it still has the familiar of the toolbar at the top. It still very, very much looks like a Mac. They remade Finder and Mail again to have different toolbars. They're smaller and more dynamic. So like search is collapsed until you click on it and then it comes to life and it gets bigger. The buttons in the toolbars, if they're not being used, they kind of fade a little bit more into the toolbar. There's definitely a bit more transparency and stuff being used. It makes it look really, really slick. I'm really excited to see what this looks like. Inside macOS, they added a control center so you can quickly and easily get to your Bluetooth, Wi-Fi settings, sound settings, drag and drop from the menu bar to that control center. It could definitely take the place where you don't necessarily need like a bartender type app where it's going to control what your menu bar looks like at that point in time. We'll see how that goes. Notification was also redone, and you're going to be able to access it a little bit easier, I think, by clicking on the time. Messages and Maps both moved to be a Catalyst app so that you get the full experience from iOS or iPadOS to macOS. It's really nice. That means messages on Mac, you get pinned conversations, which is amazingly synced across devices. Search, a new photo picker. Memojis are going to be added into into Mac messages, which what I really like about that idea is it probably means at some point soon there will be a new Mac laptop with Face ID built in. Because this is kind of like how Apple did the iPad, where they were like, yeah, in the summer at WWDC, guess what? You can edit your memojis on your iPad. Well, then when the fall rolled around, iPads had the Face ID and the true depth sensor, so you could actually do memojis right. So I'm guessing that the memojis and messages on Mac means we're going to get some true depth sensors and probably Face ID on Mac, which is going to be amazing. I love the watch to unlock, but the face to unlock would be even better. The only thing that might hurt is like if you don't have like an Apple approved like webcam. I don't know if Face ID will work. If they'll maybe make a Face ID camera that works with the laptop. We haven't seen that with the touch bar where they've made like they haven't made like an external keyboard with the touch bar, but maybe they will. Those will just have to be something that we kind of wait and see about. But I really think Face ID is about to happen in Macs. So like I said, there were maps also added. So you get all the features from iOS 14 get into the map app because it is ran on Catalyst. With Catalyst coming in, you get more control over resolution, so how the app looks and feels on the Mac. You get access to menus, keyboard APIs, and then, like I said, it was used with maps and messages. Safari is getting a little bit redone as well. Apple claims that the page load speed on Safari is 50% faster than Chrome, which is amazing. I mainly use Safari unless there's a couple websites that are not optimized for Safari that I therefore have to kick off into a Chromium type browser. So that's a little bit upsetting, but it is exciting to hear that Safari is getting a lot of JavaScript optimization. Passwords are your keychain, your Apple keychain, iCloud keychain password thing is going to know about data breaches. So kind of like if you use 1Password, it's called Watchtower, where if a data breach happens, 1Password would alert you, hey, you need to change this password. Well, that's going to come to your built-in iCloud or Apple device keychain, password keychain. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm just rattling stuff off. It was a really exciting, and then like we haven't even talked about one of the most exciting things. Cool. There's also going to be extensions. So with a little bit improvement on the extensions in Safari, you can have permission for certain times. So like if an extension needs your browser history, you can say only have the browser history for today. You don't have to give it browser history for all time. Translate options also if the website is not inside your native language is coming to Safari. Now for something that everyone was rumoring about, and that was Mac going ARM. Well, that has been confirmed. That is going to happen. Mac OS or Mac computers, Mac hardware, are going to run on Apple's silicon chips from now on. So like if you're not aware, iOS and iPadOS actually run on, or those devices that run iOS and iPadOS run using a chip, so an A series chip that Apple designs. So they have basically figured out the best hardware and software route to get that to mesh together to get you the best performance in those devices. Apple is going to bring those chips to the Mac, and I highly suggest going to watch the keynote specifically for the Mac section. All the demos that they've been running on Mac inside this keynote, they actually did on Macs running the A12Z processor, which is the processor that's in the new iPad Pros with that LiDAR sensor. So that was really exciting, and they have 16 gigabytes of RAM inside them. And they were they looked super snappy on screen. So what this means, there's going to be a common architecture across the lines. For developers, that means most of the time to get an iPhone app to work with Mac, you don't really have to do anything from here on out. It's going to bridge the gap, and you'll be able to just run iPad apps on Mac, run iPhone apps on Mac. So it's going to kind of actually lose the reason of wanting to have Catalyst, actually. Catalyst is still going to want to be around, though, for like the Intel Macs. So like any current Mac laptop that's out, or MacBook, or iMac, or Mac Pro that's currently out, those are all Intel based. So Catalyst is still going to probably want to be used on those. A bit of the transition that's happening is, of course, with native apps. So the new Xcode that's going to be introduced has the ability to work with both Apple's Mac, so Apple Silicon, and Intel's processors. Microsoft and Adobe, they've already got two of the big third-party apps working on it, app developers working on it, and they look awesome in the screen. They show PowerPoint, Excel, and I forgot which Adobe app they showed as well there, but they showed them all working really well, really smooth to the new processor. I'm curious how this is going to work with boot camping, if that's still going to be possible. I believe there's a Surface Book out there that's running a Windows ARM or Windows on ARM, so it'll be interesting to see if boot camping's still a thing where you can run Windows software on Mac hardware. This has yet, I mean, I haven't seen anything that confirmed it. I'm going to be going and scouring online to see what's happening there. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Now if Apple is using Rosetta, which from my understanding they use from the PowerPC to the Intel transition. So Rosetta is going to be a piece of software that's already installed on the Mac that is going to translate apps as needed. So if the app hasn't been built to run natively on the Apple silicone, then it's going to run and translate it to be able to run on those new Mac hardware. And they did that on the demo with Maya, the 3D graphics animation software, and with a game. And that just looked, I mean, it looked smooth. Of course, they're going to show stuff that looked smooth, but it looked like it was going to work really well. So we'll see how that goes there. And then what do we have here? What's next? I already kind of mentioned that with the new software, with the new hardware, this means that iOS and iPadOS apps can just run directly with little to no adjustments on that new hardware. So that's also, like I said, going to be a little bit exciting to see. So I'm hoping this means that iHog, once the new software takes place, unless my third-party library needs a bit more adjustment, I'm hoping that means I don't have to do much work to get it to work with new macOS, but we'll see how that goes. There is if you're interested in developing for that new version of Mac, there is a quick start program that gives you all the outlines, guides, and stuff that Apple has. You can also then apply to get developer transition kit hardware, which is going to be an A12Z filled Mac Mini with 16 gigabytes of memory and 512 gigabytes of SSD. You have to apply to be part of the program. You have to be in the Apple developer program already, and the units supposedly are going to go out this week. So we'll hopefully start to hear how those run very soon. I don't know if there's going to be some kind of embargo or anything about that, but I really hope there's not. A little bit of the timeline on that transition from them. They're hoping to ship their first Mac with Apple Silicon by the end of this year. So this is going to be kind of exciting to see. I bet that is going to be the app that actually gets Face ID built in, but it might come to the Intels because supposedly there's going to be new Intel-based Macs that have yet to be announced yet, and so that'll be it'd be interesting to see if Face ID is going to come to those Intel Macs, because the Apple Macs, I mean Macs are always Apple. The Apple Silicon Macs are going to have that secure enclave built in. So I don't think there's really a need for the T2 chips like we currently have in the MacBook series with the touch bar where you have the face with the Touch ID. Those have the T2 and I believe the T3 chips in there. So which is what makes them secure and has that secure enclave like your phone has. So I would think that if Face ID is coming to Macs, it would come to that Apple Silicon apps. Cool. So with that being said, that is all that was really talked about in the keynote. Right at the end of the keynote, they had a production safety and explained how they made sure that all the videos were made safely for this and all that good stuff. I thought that was really neat. I'm really excited for the things that are coming out. If you want to chime in now about anything, that's cool. That's all I got from the keynote. I'm super excited about it all. Sorry if I talked really fast. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I kind of had to recap about. Friday, we're going to be working on Coffee Companion a bit more, so get ready for that. So we're going to be using Swift UI to work on Coffee Companion, unless my computer gets bricked, because I'll be installing those betas. So we'll see how that goes. If I was smart, I would not be installing betas, but I'm also really excited for messages to just work like it works on all the other devices, which is a big thing that I use. Yeah, great. Thanks everyone for tuning in. thanks everyone for watching this recap. It's going to be on YouTube after this. My YouTube is also Apps by MW. If you want to chat more, there's a Discord for you to go and be a part of if you want to. All that good stuff. So like I said, Friday we will be working on Coffee Companion. Feel free to hit, if you want to be notified when I go live, make sure you hit that follow button. Let me know. Yeah, this will be on YouTube. I'm probably going to write this up into some kind of blog post. I really appreciate you guys dropping by, and I will see y'all next time.